There we go. All right, guys, welcome in to week 5 of our summer Bible study for Clearbranch. My name is Mark Harvard. I'm one of the associate pastors there, and we've got a lot to talk about tonight. Tonight we're in Exodus chapter 17 through 24. As always, it's interactive in the room. Jump out and ask questions or whatever. Make comments, whatever. Also, if you're in the comments online, my wife Jenny is handling that, and she'll be kind of the voice of the comments, and she'll jump in there if someone asks a question. Or in the meantime, let me know where you're watching from, so we can say hi and all that. So last week we talked about the parting of the Red Sea, which worked out really well because Sunday I got to preach on the parting of the Red Sea, and I'd already done all of the research. So yay, God, for lining that up for me, because that was not on purpose. So the Israelites have parted the Red Sea, or most part of the Red Sea. Israelites have come across the Red Sea. Pharaoh's army is washed away. We've got that now symbolic line, literally line in the sand, between what was and what is to come for the Israelites. That section of their life is now over. When they came out of Egypt, God, told Moses to tell them, start your calendars fresh, start everything over. And so this is a very graphic way of having that barrier set up. So we start to move on here. We're in chapter 17 of Exodus. And all the congregation of the people of Israel moved on from the wilderness of sin by stages, according to the commandment of the Lord, and camped at Rephidim. but there was no water for the people to drink. Now, Rephidim, there's a theory out there that Rephidim was not an actual, like, it wasn't like an encampment or anything like that. The theory is that Mount Sinai is toward the south of that peninsula, and the journey to Rephidim begins the move inland among the most attractive route. However, if you move inland, that means less and less water is available. They didn't have, modern plumbing bringing us bottles of Desante or anything. Therefore, the people quarreled with Moses, said, "Give us water to drink." And Moses said to them, "Why do you quarrel with me? Why do you test the Lord?" But the people thirsted there for water, and the people grumbled against Moses and said, "Why do you bring us out of Egypt to kill us and our children and our livestock with thirst?" So Moses cried to the Lord, "What shall I do with this people? They're almost ready to stone me." So beyond all that they've seen to this point, they've seen the plagues. They've seen parting of the Red Sea. And the Israelites are now once again back to complaining. They're back to doubting mode. I mean, they've been literally led by a pillar of smoke and fire. And they're still doubting. Well, there's no water. Of course we're going to die. Dude, you've been here a day. It's like one of these two yahoos, if we don't get a snack in the afternoon. "Oh, I'm dying." Because especially Jack is extremely dramatic. So the Lord said to Moses, "Pass on before the people, taking with you some of the elders of Israel, and take in your hand the staff with which you struck the Nile, and go. Behold, I will stand before you there on the rock at Horeb, and you shall strike the rock, and the water shall come out of it, and the people will drink." And Moses did so in the sight of the elders of Israel. Now these were the heads of all clans there. So, and he called the name of the place Massah and Meribah, because of the quarreling of the people of Israel, and because they tested the Lord by saying, "Is the Lord among us or not?" So they challenged Moses to supply them, "Give us water that we may drink," demanding it almost like a debt, which makes you kind of want to ask them the same thing. Once again, I ask these guys all the time, "Hey guys, what's a better way to ask that? Instead of give me supper or give me this or that, what's a better way to ask that?" They're demanding it as a debt. "You owe us water now. You fed us, so now we have something to drink. I'm a little parched from all that manna." Because they were supplied with bread, they insisted upon water so that they may be supplied with the full rotation. Now, Horeb is not a specific location, but a region. So we're not looking for like the base of that city. Also, Massah and Meribah are not new places, but particular sites at Paraphidim. A new name was upon this occasion given to the place, preserving the remembrance not of the mercy of the supply, but of the sin of their murmuring. Because Massah means temptation, because they tempted God, and Meribah means strife, because they messed with Moses, basically. They do, in fact, suppose that Moses was an imposter, Aaron a deceiver, the pillar of the cloud and fire, a sham, an illusion. They've started doubting all this stuff that they've seen. And like I talked about Sunday, now after all this, we can point and laugh. Those knuckleheads. What were they doing? If you look at how often we doubt, even though we've all in some way seen God working in our lives, how often we doubt God's presence in our own lives at different times. When things get hard, it's easy to start feeling distant. This problem is either too big for God, or God doesn't care about this, or it's too small for God for him to be bothered with it. Or God can't fix this. We don't see a way out. Well, we learned with parting the Red Sea, God finds ways out. God doesn't fit into the little box that is our limited perception. So the fact that they were calling on God and, pulling back and denying God because they got a little parched, it's laughable, but look at how much we in our own lives do kind of the same thing. So we get to the water from a rock. He's telling Moses, hit this rock, water will come out of it. Now, sedimentary rock in that region can develop pockets where excess water collect. And, you look across, you don't see much. But if you see and see like some seepage and you break the surface of that, water can start to come out. However, in this case, way more water came out than would ever be really possible under natural circumstances. So there is a kind of a geological answer for what would have happened, but naturally with the geology, it never would have been at the level that was in this story. It would never been enough to give water to all the Israelites. We're talking small amounts. And it's actually enough to be considered, what was the phrase? Which ran throughout the camp in streams and rivers. Nope, we're not getting that. Not from one of these sedimentary pools here. So we move on to verse 8. Israel is defeating Amalek. Then Amalek came and fought with Israel. So Moses said to Joshua, choose for us men and go out and fight with Amalek. Tomorrow I will stand on the top of the hill with the staff of Moses in my hand. So Joshua did as Moses told him and fought with Amalek, while Moses, Aaron, and Hur went up to the top of the hill. Now, whenever Moses held up his hand, Israel prevailed. Whenever he lowered his hand, Amalek prevailed. But Moses' hand grew weary, so they took a stone and put it under him, and he sat on it. While Aaron and Hur, H-U-R, held up his hands, one on one side and one on the other. So his hands were steady until the going down of the sun. And Joshua overwhelmed Amalek and his people with the sword. Then the Lord said to Moses, write this as a memorial in a book and recite it in the ears of Joshua, that I might utterly blot out the memory of Amalek from under heaven. And Moses built an altar, called the name of it, the Lord is my banner, saying, a hand upon the throne of the Lord will have war with Amalek from generation to generation. Now, the Amalekites were kind of either a nomadic or a semi-nomadic group. They were also descended from Abraham through the Esau side of it. So there's some baked in resentment here, and kind of a little bit of a hereditary malice that ran through their blood. And it was now exacerbated by working through all this. As far as the battle, lots of times, even back in the Egyptian days, a lot of times the armies would be commanded points from above. Think of it kind of like you have press box coaches in college football, that can see from above. And a lot of times that would happen in battles in this time period. So you'd have, generals standing on tops of nearby mountains, raising their arms, giving the attack, or, almost like an early version of semaphore. But a lot of times that was an Egyptian way of doing it. So we've got the first mention of Joshua here. And he goes on to do some better things. And Hur, who some think was his brother-in-law, the husband of Miriam, Moses' sister. So Hur was Moses' brother-in-law. When Moses got tired, his hands were heavy. The strongest arm will fall with being long and extended. It's only God whose hand is stretched out still. It's pretty interesting how that actually played out, because Moses was not actually fighting the battle. Yeah, I'm sure there were people that down below that were in fact tired. Fighting can be tiring. But Moses was so exhausted that he couldn't hold his arms up. That's actually a symbolic gesture in the fact that sometimes the most exhausting work we can do is of a spiritual nature, not so much the physical. It's like how you get tired sometimes from doing mental stuff. And I didn't dig any ditches today, but at the same time, I did like an entire school's worth of spreadsheets today, and I want to go to sleep now. I am sleepy. One of the most heart-wrenching and the most tired I've ever been on a mission trip was the first time we had a group that went to Hyderabad, India. We weren't building a school because no one wants me to do that. Cecil, yes. Me, no. No one wants me to do that. But we were just basically hanging out with these kids that were coming from impoverished areas, and we went and loved on them, and we got to go see where the emotional toll that took. Every night I just collapsed into bed every single night. The spiritual battles we fight, and the work that we do spiritually can really take a toll here, and that's what Moses was doing. So to this point, we moved from the slavery section of the early parts of Exodus, and as we move into chapter 18, we're moving from deliverance, coming out of Egypt of oppressions, to preparation for worship. Because as we get closer to Sinai, we're starting to see more of God's word and how we should go forward with the church and how God's people should act. So from the time they left Egypt to this point is about 2 months. They've been on the road about 2 months. Now, granted, it should have only been, a couple of weeks, but someone didn't ask for directions. Let's just say that. They wandered a while, but they had some stuff they had to do. They got held up. So we get to the introduction, or rather the revisiting of Jethro. Now, Jethro, priest of Midian, Moses' father-in-law, who he was pretty much on good terms with at this point, heard all that God had done for Moses and for Israel, his people, how the Lord had brought Israel out of Egypt. Now, Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, had taken Zipporah, Moses' wife, after he had sent her home, along with her 2 sons. The name of one was Gershom, for he said, I've been a sojourner in a foreign land. The other was Eliezer, for he said, the God of my father was my help and delivered me from the sword of Pharaoh. Now Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, came with his sons and his wife to Moses in the wilderness, where he was encamped at the mountain of God. Now, we think that Moses' family left a while back and had missed a lot of the drama. But now that they were at a place where they were going to be getting closer to Sinai, Jethro brought them with him. And he was happy for that time with, his daughter, grandkids, you grandparents out there, as long as it's not permanent, you're happy to see the grandkids. No, you take them home now. They're being awful. So Jethro brings them back, and he sent word, I, your father-in-law, Jethro, are coming to you with your wife and her 2 sons with her. Moses went out to meet his father-in-law and bowed down, kissed him. They asked each other of their welfare, went into the tent, small talk, Then Moses told his father-in-law all that the Lord had done to Pharaoh and to the Egyptians for Israel's sake, all the hardship that had come upon them in the way, and how the Lord had delivered them. And Jethro rejoiced for all the good that the Lord had done in Israel, in that he had delivered them out of the hand of the Egyptians. Now, Jethro, it says something that Jethro was happy about it was going, because Jethro was a Midianite, was not to share in the promised land. And yet he shared with them in the joy of their deliverance, which is extra interesting because you had Israelites still grumbling over stuff. So someone that was not even going to be able to partake in the promised land was happier than some of the people that were supposed to be going. So the Israelites themselves murmuring and notwithstanding all God's goodness to them, here was a Midianite rejoicing. To bring Moses' wife and children with him, it seems he had sent them back probably from the inn with his wife's aversion to the circumcision of their son. The sons' names, the eldest was, once again, Gershom, a stranger. Moses designing thereby not only a memorial of his own condition, stranger, because, Moses came and went, felt like a stranger in many places. He felt like a stranger in Israel, felt like a stranger when he left. He was always the new guy. And then the other one, Eliezer, translated so as to look forward, which is the original, will bear the Lord is my help and will deliver me from the sword of Pharaoh. So both of his sons' names were testaments to that recent experience that Moses has had in his journey. He dedicated them there. So verse 10, Jethro said, blessed be the Lord who's delivered you out of the hand of the Egyptians and out of the hand of Pharaoh, and has delivered the people from under the hand of the Egyptians. Now I know that the Lord is greater than all gods, because in this affair they dealt arrogantly with the people, And Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, brought a burnt offering and sacrifices to God. And Aaron came with all the elders of Israel to eat bread with Moses' father-in-law before God. Now, once again, Jethro is there. He brought Moses' family with him, and he's about to have some truthful words with Moses about how he's doing things. But in the meantime, we have to realize that when they say that they made the sacrifices, the burnt offering sacrifices to God, a lot of times what this included was you had your burnt herbs and that sort of thing, but also usually meant like a calf or a sheep or something like that along those lines. This is before the new laws came down from the mountain and talked about that, so they were still doing things with kind of a mixture of the new ways mixed into what they were used to from back in the day. We didn't have these the commandments weren't here yet. They didn't quite know exactly how things were going to turn out. So I just want to make sure that we're on the same page with this was the old way of doing it. So the next day Moses sat to judge the people, and the people stood around Moses from morning until evening. Now, I say judge the people, he was more giving advice. They were bringing him spiritual questions, and he was saying, yeah, you can't do that. Or, yeah, that's fine. You're good. That's basically the extent of it. Moses' father-in-law saw all this because, Moses, morning till evening. Moses' father-in-law saw this when he was doing for his people, and he said, what is this you're doing for the people? Why do you sit alone and all the people stand around you from morning until evening? And Moses said to his father-in-law, because the people come to me to inquire of God. When they have a dispute, they come to me, and I decide between one person and another. And I make them know the statutes of God and his laws. Now, many times in life, we wish we knew what God was thinking, or what God's mind was, just between we have like a loss, we have a confusing time in our lives, something. This was them looking for that reassurance. And they were looking to Moses to give them that reassurance. Are you sure God is with us on this? Is this really God's plan to do this or that? His business was, not to make laws. Those were God's laws, but to make known God's laws and share, well, you can't do this because God says this, or do it this way instead. And he solved minor disputes. Now, Moses' father-in-law says to him, what you're doing is not good. You and the people with you will certainly wear yourselves out, for the thing is too heavy for you. You're not able to do it alone, which everyone loves to hear. You can't do it by yourself. Now obey my voice. I will give you advice, and God be with you. Once again, Moses is pretty much the mouthpiece of God to the Israelites. And here's Jethro giving him advice, as only a father-in-law can do. Now obey my voice, I will give you advice, and God be with you. You shall represent the people before God and bring their cases to God. And you shall warn them about the statutes and the laws, and make them know the way in which they must walk and what they must do. Moreover, look for able men from all the people, men who fear God, who are trustworthy and hate a bribe, and place such men over the people as chiefs of thousands, of hundreds, of fifties, and of tens, and let them judge the people at all times. Every great matter they shall bring to you, but any smaller matter they shall decide themselves. So it will be easier for you, and they will bear the burden with you. If you do this, God will direct you, and you'll be able to endure, and all this people also will go to their place in peace. So it was too much for Moses to do by himself. So Jethro gives me his advice to hand down that responsibility, which a lot of us, me too, I am horrible at delegating. Awful. It's a little bit of a control freak part of me that wants to do everything a certain way. And I feel like Moses did something that I would not be able to do because, stakes are high. You're dealing with God here. So you do have to go find a certain type of person to do this. They have to be, where was it? Oops, I put my glasses on. What were those qualifications? Able men from all the people. That means they had to have good character. No shysters here. They have to be trustworthy, hate a bribe. So not worried about getting wealthy, not worried about accumulating money. They want their priorities are right. And place such men over the people as chiefs of thousands, hundreds, fifties, tens. The big things were still going to come to Moses, but the little things these judges were going to be able to deal with. So, yeah, Jethro thought it was too much business for Moses to undertake alone. It'd be a prejudice to his health and too great a fatigue on him. Note, there may be some overdoing even in well-being, and therefore our zeal must always be governed by discretion. Verse 24, so Moses listened to the voice of his father-in-law and did all that he had said, because, you got to keep your in-laws happy, right? Yeah, they're going nuts on the Xbox in there, aren't they? Wow. I wish I was that excited about anything, Moses chose able men out of all Israel and made them heads of the people, chiefs of thousands and of hundreds, of fifties, of tens, and they judged the people at all times. Any hard case they brought to Moses, but any small matter they decided themselves. Then Moses let his father-in-law depart, and he went away to his own country in the interest of family harmony. So here we are. We finally get to Mount Sinai. Finally. Road trips over, everybody out of the car. Verse 19, on the third new moon, after the people of Israel had gone out of the land of Egypt, so 50 days, basically, after the coming out of Egypt. On that day, they came out into the wilderness of Sinai. They left and came into the wilderness of Sinai, and they encamped in the wilderness. So 50 days after coming out of Egypt, in remembrance of the Feast of Pentecost, which was observed the 50th day after the Passover, and in compliance with which the Spirit had poured out upon the apostles at the Feast of Pentecost 50 days after the death of Christ. In Egypt, they had spoken of a 3-day journey into the wilderness to the place of their sacrifice, but it proved to be almost a 2-month journey. So often are we out in the calculation of times, and things prove longer in the doing than we expected. We check on them.
They're still alive.
Apparently, maybe not for long. Yeah. Our youngest gets a little into Xbox games, like viscerally into them.
Are they playing a new college football 25?
I have not yet. I was actually considering making an appeal to my bride because you have a birthday coming up Saturday. So, just saying. So, all right. She'll make it back in a sec. So there Israel encamped at Mount Sinai before the mountain when Moses went up to God. It's a great thing to see on your planner. Oh, appointment with God, 10 a.m. There you go. So the Lord called to him out of the mountain, saying, "Thus you shall say to the house of Jacob and tell the people of Israel." Now note that he says both house of Jacob and Israel here. This is a reminder of what they once were. House of Jacob, lowly, low, low, low. At Israel, high, 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 high. To remind them that those who had lately been as low as Jacob, when he went to start walking, had grown as great as God made him when he came forward and was called Israel. Verse 4, you yourselves have seen what I did to the Egyptians and how I bore you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself. That is a very recognized quote, the whole eagle's wings thing. It comes back later on as well. When I was at the University of Alabama, we actually had, at the Wesley Foundation, had T-shirts that paraphrased it and said they will raise up with trunks like elephants or something like that. What'd I do?
No, at Auburn, we just used the original verse.
I'm just saying.
You know how they all.
Well, actually, and going forward with that, there is some confusion through the translations of whether or not it was actually eagles. Anyway, it might have, because there's a very good theory that they were actually mentioning a griffin vulture, which has a 10-foot wingspan. And that makes this a dig because, all throughout Exodus, all these actions that God has been taking have been almost pinpointing Egyptian gods to take digs at. And we talk about through the plagues. Almost every plague had an Egyptian god that was like represented by what the plague was, that was getting controlled by God. Through this one, if it was in fact a griffin vulture, there's an Egyptian goddess, Nekhbet, who protected Pharaoh in the form of a vulture goddess. So when we throw out, I born you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself, it might be griffin vulture wings. Another theory that goes along with that, some theologians think that the whole eagle's wing things, other birds carry their young in their talons, before they can fly. But the eagle here, they say, I'm not a, what's the bird? I'm not, oh yeah, one of them. I'm not one. I don't know if this is true or not, but they say that eagles oftentimes will carry their young upon the tops of their wings for a number of reasons. One is to help them get a better feeling for flying. Others so that the archers who shoot the flying animals cannot hurt the young ones. I think you might be thinking it through a little more, but yeah. So thus in the Red Sea, the pillar of cloud and fire, the token of God's presence, interposed itself between the Israelites and their pursuers, which would be very similar to those eagle's wings protecting the young. So that's a theory out there. Now, verse 5, now therefore, if you will indeed obey my voice and keep my covenant, you shall be my treasured possession among all peoples, for the earth is mine. There are a couple of words in that I want to point out. If you will indeed obey, not just obey, not just half-heartedly obey. Fine, I'll do it. Indeed obey. That's a marking that God is not looking just for obedience. God is looking for complete and utter trust. Exactly. A complete obedience. That's a word that we bounced around the office earlier today about, complete faith and complete. That's a word that isn't used enough. We always like to give wiggle room, but in a complete faith, there's no. It is the full circle, the full faith. God had shown them real favors, even though they were whining about stuff, and therefore required real obedience. And you shall be to me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. These are the words that you shall speak to the people of Israel. So Moses comes down, calls the leaders, all the clan leaders, the elders of the people, and set before them all these words that the Lord had commanded him. All the people answered together and said, all that the Lord has spoken, we will do. They immediately answered. Remember back before the Passover, and we talked about how they were supposed to bring these perfect lambs into their home, eat it immediately, eat it with your staff and your shoes on. When God blesses you, you don't sit on that blessing. You act on it immediately. You don't hesitate, because hesitation shows a doubt. So they immediately replied back, all that the Lord has spoken, we will do. And Moses reported the words of the people to the Lord, and the Lord said to Moses, behold, I'm coming to you in a thick cloud. We've seen that before, that the people may hear when I speak with you and may also believe you forever. Now, the thick cloud was basically to keep things secret. Not that he was keeping information back, but so that people could not see truly what was going on at that time. This was a very much a deliberate reveal. And even the further they got out from Moses, they were not allowed to get as close, because you didn't want people to get close enough to have a visible representation. You don't want somebody to get when God's there, you don't want someone else to be able to paint a picture, draw a picture, describe, because God is supposed to be beyond our understanding there. When Moses told the words to the people to the Lord said to Moses, go to the people and consecrate them today and tomorrow. Let them wash their garments. Consecrating, just make yourselves ready for worship. Ritually pure. no contact with anything ruled unclean. And he wants them to be ready for the third day. For on the third day, the Lord will come down on Mount Sinai in the sight of all the people, and you shall set limits, probably a line in the dirt, maybe a ditch, for the people all around, saying, take care not to go up into the mountain or touch the edge of it. Whoever touches the mountain shall be put to death. No hand shall touch him, but he shall be stoned or shot, whether beast or man. He shall not live. When the trumpet sounds a long blast, they shall come up to the mountain. It says trumpet, but not, Dizzy Gillespie was not playing on Mount Sinai. What they're referring to as a shofar, which is a ram's horn that has been heated and moistened to where it can be stretched and twisted. People carry them in guitar cases when they're traveling now. I saw that on an Instagram reel. So Moses went down. So Moses went down from the mountain to the people and consecrated the people, and they washed their garments. And he said to the people, "Be ready for the third day. And by the way, do not go near a woman." On the chances, at that point we had a woman was considered unclean for menstruation, and although when I was going through this, I thought, yeah, because a woman's going to you think you're totally clean, and a woman's going to find that little bit you missed. You don't want that. So we're getting ready for what is basically the most powerful sermon ever. The preacher was God. Mount Sinai was the pulpit. I mean, if you think some of the things that Micah does with lights on a Sunday morning, like on Easter Sunday, were big, wait. This is like the biggest, most, blowout of a worship experience ever. On the morning of the third day, there were thunders and lightnings and a thick cloud on the mountain and a very loud trumpet blast. This was not a quick beep like an air horn. This droned on and got louder and louder, so that all the people in the camp trembled. Some people say that blast was done by the ministry of the angels. And we read of trumpets being sounded by angels in Revelation 8:6. It was the sound of the trumpet that made all the people tremble, as those who knew their own guilt and who had reason to expect that the sound of the trumpet was to them the alarm of war. You got thunder and lightning. In case, someone's not looking, they got thunder to call attention. Yeah, I mean, this is all build up to this big grand reveal. Verse 17, then Moses brought the people out of the camp to meet God, and they took their stand at the foot of the mountain. Now, Mount Sinai was wrapped in smoke because the Lord had descended on it in fire. The smoke of it went up like the smoke of a kiln, and the whole mountain trembled greatly. And as the sound of the trumpet grew louder and louder, Moses spoke, and God answered him in thunder. So Moses brings things to order as God's minister, not ministering to God, but God's appointed minister to the people. Some think it was now what he said, I exceedingly fear and quake, but God stilled his fear by his distinguishing favor to him and in calling him up to the top of the mountain. So verse 20, the Lord came down on Mount Sinai to the top of the mountain, and the Lord called Moses to the top of the mountain, and so Moses went up, because that's what you do when God calls you somewhere. And the Lord said to Moses, go down and warn the people, lest they break through to the Lord to look, and many of them perish. Because people are nosy, and they want to see. This is God on top of this mountain. I can't see, there's smoke. So people might be trying to sneak a peek. Also let the priests who come near to the Lord consecrate themselves, lest the Lord break out against them. And Moses said to the Lord, the people cannot come up to Mount Sinai, for you yourself warned us, saying, set limits around the mountain and consecrate it. Lord said to him, go down and come up, bringing Aaron with you, but do not let the priests and the people break through to come up to the Lord, lest he break out against them. So Moses went down to the people, and he told them. So God forbade all these people from coming through the haze. Enough was, provided, of what would happen if they did. So this meant that, this was real deal. Don't come any closer than you're allowed to. So there were a lot of reasons for that, but they were not allowed to gratify their curiosity because they might see but not gaze. We're supposed to gaze on spiritual things. Some of them probably were desirous to see some sort of image of God that they might know how to make an image of God, which he took care to prevent. And we talk about that in a few minutes, actually now, because we're at the Ten Commandments. This new law God had given to man before. It was written in his heart by nature, but sin had so defaced it that we needed a refresher course. Remember back in the Garden of Eden, we didn't need these rules, But sin had so clouded our minds, clouded humanity's judgment, that now we've got to be reminded, hey, all those things that you've started doing, stop.
Kind of like it is nowadays.
Exactly, things just progressively get worse until it goes too far, and somebody's got to call you back. We saw some of that this past weekend, didn't we? Both sides. Someone takes a shot at a former president, current candidate. Both sides condemn a shooter, and even people who are outspoken on both sides are like, guys, too much. Let's not do that. Let's pull it back a little bit. So, verse 20, and God spoke all these words, saying, I am the Lord of your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. So these first 4 commandments that are given concern our duty to God. 3, you shall have no other gods before me. Egypt had a lot of gods. This was a big problem for their culture. It was probably the sin that they were most in danger of now, going back to that. Because, Egypt had all of these, God of rain, God of sun, God of, fertility. All these gods down to just one God. You shall not make for yourself a carved image or any likeness of anything that is heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. You shall not bow down to them or serve them, for I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God. He owns it. Visiting the iniquity of the fathers on the children to the 3rd and the 4th generation of those who hate me, but showing steadfast love to the thousands of those who love me and keep my commandments. Now, our worship is kind of governed by the power of faith, not by the power of imagination. You artists in the room might sting a little bit. But the whole no graven image thing is because of the fear that we would start to worship those images. That we would start to, even if it's bad, you can still pass it off as, I'm not worshiping this painting of Jesus. Painting of, this or that. I'm admiring it. But even those images, because they come with such spiritual and emotional weight, these commandments are basically to keep humanity from worshiping the images instead of God. You shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain, for the Lord will not hold him guiltless who takes his name in vain. So there are many ways that we do that. Through hypocrisy, making a profession of God's name but not living into it. Covenant breaking, if we make promises to God. How many times have we made a promise? I swear, God, if you just do this, I'll never do that again. Or empty promises brought about by fear or by anxiety or stress or that sort of thing. By rash swearing, mentioning the name of God or any of his attributes in the form of an oath without any occasion for it. We know what we're talking about there. The 2-word GD. Another one I would tack in there, probably with the rash swearing, mentioning the name of God or any of his attributes in the form of an oath without any just occasion for it or with due application in mind of it, is when we say, oh my gosh, or rather when we say, oh my God, instead of oh my gosh. Heard a pastor do a crazy good sermon about that, how often people do that, and they don't, because when you say that, it's just an exclamation of surprise, or that's crazy, I wouldn't think that. They're not thinking about the Father when they're saying that. So it's a misuse of God, which becomes blasphemous, and it's taking the Lord's name in vain. So think about that when you get surprised next time. What's up?
Well, I heard also like another form of in God's name, you made this false prophecy, because that's bringing God's name to nothingness.
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah, that's the where was it? The covenant breaking. Yeah. Absolutely. So yeah, there are lots of ways to do that, and it's why it's one of the first ones. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but on the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. On it you shall not do any work, you or your son or your daughter, your male servant or your female servant, or your livestock, or the sojourner who is within your gates. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that's in them, and rested on the seventh day. So, who shall not do any work? You or your son or your daughter, your male servant or your female servant. Then you get down to other people, but no mention of wives. Not a one. It's not a sexist thing. Back in that time, stay with me. Stay with me. Don't riot. Don't riot. Come on. I'm getting there. People yell at me for talking too fast, so I'm trying to slow down. Chill. Don't make me be the guy that tell you to calm down. In this cultural framework, the wife was always understood to be right there with the husband. So by saying you to the males, females culturally within this were included in that with their what? With their husbands. Calm down. I'm just gonna hide behind this. So also, let me give you some actual bad news within that. You're supposed to rest on that seventh day. That doesn't mean things don't have to get done. It means you have to do the work in preparation for. You can't just use that, I would get up and feed the animals, but it's the seventh day. I guess I'll stay in bed. You can't do that. You have to make allowances for that. So, yeah, some people think it denotes extra preparation. As we make it to the Sabbath, we have to think of it before it comes, that when it does come, we may keep it holy and do the duty of it. Just do the prep, set it up. So that's the first four. The last sixth of the 10 Commandments. Where are we on time? Oh, yikes. All right, excess. The last six of the 10 Commandments, comprehending our duty to ourselves and to one another, and constituting a comment upon the second great commandment. Honor your father and mother, that your days may be long in the land that the Lord your God is giving you. This is also mentioned over in Ephesians 6, 1 through 3. Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor thy father and thy mother, which is the first commandment with promise, that it may be well with thee and thou mayest live long on the earth. Basically, just calling for a decent respect of to their persons, and inward esteem of them outwardly expressed upon all occasions in our conduct towards them. You shall not murder. That concerns our own and our neighbors' lives. Some interpret this as it does not forbid killing in lawful war or in our own necessary defense, nor the magistrates pulling offenders to death, for those things tend to be preserving of life. That's a theory. But it forbids all malice and hatred toward the person of any and all personal revenge arising therefrom. You shall not commit adultery, which concerns our own and our neighbor's chastity, which forbids all acts of uncleanness, with all those fleshly lusts which produce those acts of war against the soul. These things kind of build on each other, don't they? You shall not steal, which concerns your own and our neighbor, or concerns our own and our neighbor's wealth, estate, goods. It forbids us to rob our neighbor's goods and their stuff, but also, catch this, it forbids us to rob ourselves of what we might have by sinful spending. You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor, which concerns you and your neighbor's good name. That encompasses speaking falsely in any manner, lying, unequivocating, in any way devising or designing to deceive our neighbor. You shall not covet your neighbor's house. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife, or his male servant, or his female servant, or his ox, or his donkey, not the donkey, or anything that is your neighbor's. Don't keep up with the Joneses, basically. Now, I see snickering. What we doing?
I'm over here in the Word.
Robin's over there in the Word.
I'm glad I'm on this end.
I still like that couch. Don't get struck by lightning. Now, when all the people saw the thunder and the flashes of lightning and the sound of the trumpet and the mountain smoking, people were afraid and they trembled. They stood far off and said to Moses, "You speak to us, and we will listen, because, oh my gosh, we're scared." That's me, not them. "But do not let God speak to us, lest we die." Moses said to the people, "Do not fear, for God has come to test you, that the fear of him may be before you, that you may not sin." The people stood far off while Moses drove near the thick darkness where God was. Drama, an epic presentation of the rules, and it went far beyond anything any of them had ever seen before. They were shook, if the kids still say it that way or not. I don't know. I'm really good at killing vernacular for teenagers when I start using them. The Lord said to Moses, "Thus you shall say to the people of Israel, you have seen for yourself that I have talked with you from heaven. You shall not make gods of silver to be with me, nor shall you make yourselves gods of gold," which we all know how that turned out. "An altar of earth you shall make for me, and sacrifice it on it your burnt offerings and your peace offerings, your sheep and your oxen. In every place where I cause my name to be remembered, I will come to you and bless you. If you make me an altar of stone, you shall not build it of hewn stones, for you wield your tool on it, you profane it." Basically, he wanted not cut stone, but stacked stone. Low, not high. Plainness was accepted as the best ornament for these things. When he said, "In all the places where I record my name, or where my name was recorded, that is, where I'm worshipped in sincerity, I come unto thee and I will bless thee." So afterwards, God chose one particular place wherein to record his name. Now, that gets changed later on in the gospel, where men are encouraged to pray everywhere. You know, where two or more are gathered. We hit the section about the law about slaves. I'm just going to give you a quick summary. The laws in that chapter relate to the 5th and 6th commandments, for the most part. Punishment of disobedient children that strike their parents, curse them, the duty of masters toward their servants. Punishment of disobedient children, that is verse 15, and cursing them is verse 17.
Why are you looking at me like that when you say that?
You said, whoa, 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 where is that?
I said about the children.
The children, yeah.
And 15.
15 and 17. Curse them is 17. Strike their parents is 15. Somebody beating up on you, Debbie Duke?
No, not me.
I'll regulate it.
They know better.
So, yeah. So we go with that. Let me scroll down through some of this other, some social justice here. In verse 16, if a man seduces a virgin who is not betrothed and lies with her, he shall give the bride price for her and make her his wife. If her father utterly refuses to give her to him, he shall pay money equal to the bride price for virgins. Verse 18, you shall not permit a sorceress to live. 19, whoever lies with an animal shall be put to death. So we scoot on down and we get to the next chapter. This chapter continues and concludes the acts that I passed in the first session upon Mount Sinai. You've got other stuff there. Then we get to the laws about Sabbath and the festivals. Every 7th year, the land was to rest. They must not plow through nor sow it at the beginning of the year. Then they could not expect any great. I'm summarizing here now, just because of time. 6 days you shall do your work, but on the 7th day you shall rest, that your ox and your donkey may have rest, and the son of your servant woman and the alien may be refreshed. Pay attention to all that I've said to you, and make no mention of the names of other gods, nor let it be heard on your lips. At this point, we really are showing he's making practical all of these commandments that have been handed down. What happened? Hey, God, what if this happens? Well, if this happens, you do this. He's really is just spreading it out. So then we finally get to Canaan. We'll close with this. We're in verse 20 of chapter 23. Yeah, we're in 23. Verse 20, chapter 23, the conquest of Canaan. Behold, I send an angel before you to guard you on the way and bring you to the place where I prepared. Pay careful attention to him and obey his voice, but do not rebel against him, for he will not pardon your transgression, for my name is in him. But if you carefully obey his voice and do all that I say, then I will be an enemy to your enemies and an adversary to your adversaries. Talking about an angel, roughly taking that description, what could it also be talking about? Christ. Some suppose it was to be the Son of God, the angel of the covenant, for the Israelites in the wilderness were said to tempt Christ, and we may as well suppose him God's messenger and the church's redeemer before his incarnation. So, then the covenant is conformed in chapter 24. Lord said to Moses, come up to the Lord, you and Aaron and Nadab and Abihu, Aaron's sons, and 70 of the elders of Israel worship from afar. Moses alone shall come near the Lord, but the others shall not come near, and the people shall not come up with him. So we're just getting the executive council up there. Moses came and told the people all the words of the Lord and all the rules, and all the people answered with one voice and said, all the words that the Lord has spoken, we will do. And Moses wrote down all the words of the Lord. He rose early in the morning and built an altar in the foot of the mountain and 12 pillars according to the 12 tribes of Israel. He sent young men of the people of Israel who offered burnt offerings and sacrificed peace offerings of oxen to the Lord. Moses took half the blood and put it in the basins. Half the blood he threw against the altar. Then he took the book of the covenant and read it in the hearing of the people. And they said, all that the Lord has spoken, we will do, and we will be obedient. And Moses took the blood, threw it on the people, and said, behold, the blood of the covenant that the Lord has made with you in accordance with all these words. We're going to do that Sunday. Throw blood everywhere? We're not getting new carpet in the sanctuary. Most of that carpet's held together by Christmas Eve candle wax and coffee anyway. So then Moses, Aaron, and Nadab, and Abihu, and 70 of the elders of Israel went up. When they saw the God of Israel, there was under his feet, as it were, a pavement of sapphire stone, like the very heaven of clearness. And he did not lay his hand on the chief men of the people of Israel. They beheld God and ate and drank. So we are in verse 9. 11 was 8 and drank.
Chapter 23 still, or
We're 24. Yeah. I'm going fast because we're trying to get to a certain point before we get in. I'm sorry. So comes the people, acquaints them with the laws he had received, writes the laws, reasons the people, and then they sacrifice the sprinkling blood, ratifies the covenant between them and God. They saw God and did eat and drink. They had not only their lives preserved, but vigor, courage, comfort. Basically, this was a joyous occasion. So when they ate and drank, it was not a nervous thing. They were joyous. This was a party. Like, hey, God's here, y'all. Rejoice with this. The public ceremony of sealing the covenant being over, Moses is called up to receive further instructions, and he comes back with stone tablets. The Lord said to Moses, come up to me on the mountain and wait there, that I might give you the tablets of stone with the law and the commandment, which I have written for their instructions. So Moses rose with his assistant Joshua, and Moses went up to the mountain of God. And he said to the elders, wait here for us until we return to you. And behold, Aaron and Hur are with you. Whoever has a dispute, let him go to them. More setting up Joshua to be a future leader. Then Moses went up the mountain, and the cloud covered the mountain. The glory of the Lord dwelt on Mount Sinai, and the cloud covered it 6 days. Moses is showing patience because he waited 6 days. You know, if you go to a college course. You give a teacher's assistant 5 minutes before you leave, a teacher 10 minutes to leave, a doctor, professor 15 minutes before you leave. You give God 6 days, apparently. Moses showed patience, and it shows that communion with God is worth waiting for, no matter what the wait is. And on the seventh day, he called to Moses out of the midst of the cloud. Now the appearance and the glory of the Lord was like a devouring fire on the top of the mountain in the sight of the people of Israel. Moses entered the cloud and went up the mountain, and Moses was on the mountain 40 days and 40 nights. So that's where we're stopping today, because some big things happen while Moses is up there that we're going to come back for our final meeting and next week and address. But yeah, this is Moses getting the tablets. David Shelton and I were talking. There's a old Mel Brooks movie called History of the World Part 1, where it has Moses coming down from Mount Sinai, and he's got 3 tablets, and he drops one. He says, I bring you these 10 commandments. So yeah, these are the 10. I don't know what would have been the other 5. I don't know. Thou shalt not call skim milk. I'm just saying. So that's where we are. Next week we have tabernacle construction, which we will breeze through because there was a lot of technical language there, and we'll talk about the golden calf, and then we'll breeze through the rest of Exodus. There's a lot more technical stuff that has less to do with the narrative, so we'll breeze through that. Before we get out here, does anyone have any sort of prayer request? Where do you need to see God working in your day?
Pray for my father, Ron Yells, and Sharon Hood, my aunt. She has cancer, and my father has failed 4 times since he's been in Florida.
Oh gosh. So your father and your aunt. All right. And online, if you want to submit something, Jenny can read them out. Our country? Yeah, we've got some big things happening right now on both sides of the aisle, and hopefully we'll get to a little closer to a place where our priorities are correct.
God's still in charge. Right?
God still is in charge. Absolutely. Absolutely, Cecil. What else? Any praise reports? Where have you seen God working?
Somebody head got turned at the right time, but they were a bullet.
Yeah. I don't believe that was planned. I saw God working in some visits I got to do yesterday. I got to go visit some of our homebound members yesterday, and got to spend some time with some really cool folks. So that was good.
If he's still looking forward to taking back his
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Anybody else? All right. Kate? Our Kate? Okay. We'll do. All right.
I'll rather pray for others too.
Listen to
Keep them both.
her sister. Got it.
Kate's got all kind of interviews floating out there.
Job search.
We did get, if I can take a second, we did get an answer. She moved to the second round.
Sweet.
One on Saturday.
Nice.
So we're waiting
All right.
on it.
So job searches.
Yes.
Belts. All right, let's pray.
So she can continue to contribute to society instead of moving home. There we go.
You really just want her to get off the payroll, don't you?
Something like that.
All right. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this time together. We thank you for the opportunity to come closer to you through your word, God. We ask particularly for blessings on sick relatives, on Robin's father, Robin's aunt. We ask for guidance for our country. God, we ask for you to cover our country in your grace, God, and protect those that need protecting. God, we thank you for the ways that you work in the world around us, God. The big dramatic and showy ways, and also those ways that we may not notice, God. The ways that are more subtle. God, we ask for guidance, and we ask for discernment for those interviewing for jobs. God, that the best candidate be for jobs to be chosen, and we ask for your path to be established for Kate. God, we thank you for all of this time together, for the fellowship, for the learning, and we thank you most of all for the ultimate sacrifice that you gave in your only Son, God. In your Son's name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
All right. Clicky, clicky.
Oh, Val. Nice to meet you.